Hi, I'm Jeremy Toeman, and today on Founder at 50, my guest is David Arnett. David was a child chess prodigy and friend of Josh Waitzkin, the subject of one of my all-time favorite movies, Searching for Bobby Fischer. He's a Wharton grad who immediately decided not to become a finance guy. Instead, he landed his first job when his family went on a safari in Botswana. David ended up building the world's first digital TV ad archive and spent over 16 years inventing his own roles in market research, product management, and data analysis without ever having a formal job description, all before pivoting into founding his own startup. David shares how that chess champion mindset taught him valuable problem-solving skills that guided his career, and how a weekly pandemic-era poker game sparked the idea for Hey Chuck, his sports fan community and engagement platform. He's a dad, a near neighbor of mine in the Rivertowns community, and the only person I'm a little nervous about playing a game of Boggle with. So let's shake those dice and jump on in. David, how you doing today?
Well, how are you?
Doing really, really good, thanks. It's a muggy, hot, icky, late spring kind of day, but otherwise it's a pretty good day, and I'm really, really happy we're chatting here.
Yeah. I got some sweat out this morning on the tennis court. Now I'm all about business.
I have to say, David's one of those people that every time we talk, he tells me about like the 3 times that day he played tennis. I'm like, I got to do something. I'm like 2 weeks into using a Peloton, so that's at least making me feel like I'm doing something good. So David, as I've said in the past little bit, and I'm going to say with everybody, this is definitely one of the first 5 episodes that I'm recording here on the Founder at 50 podcast. So thank you in advance for putting up with whatever our journey takes us on today. But since the podcast is about journeys, I'm hoping that'll be all right for us.
Yeah. I think it'll work great, and it's an honor to be nominated.
Well, you're an interesting guest for me. I think in especially my first batch, you are sort of my newest friend, colleague, professional acquaintance, associate, all of those things. Most of the people I've talked to are passed crossed many, many years ago. So what I'm excited about in our conversation today is we never knew each other in our 20s or 30s or anything of the sort. But before we get into Chuck, I want to go all the way back to David at 21, coming out of school. Tell us a little bit about where you got going and where you were by the time you were, say, 24, 25, 26. We're going to ground at the beginning of the journey.
I went to Wharton undergrad. I grew up in the city, went to Philly, came right back. I, was on a pretty common track to a crazy Wall Street finance job. Like I had all the training for it. I didn't really have any desire to do that though. So I was like the rare exception, probably the black sheep of Wharton at some level, where I taught tennis and chess, which are two of my favorite activities, for a few months after school while I was looking for the right fit. And I found my first job in a very circuitous manner. My parents and my sister were going on a safari trip to Botswana, and they invited me to go. And I said, I don't think I can do it. I'll probably be starting a new job. I don't think I can just say, a month into my first job of my career, I'm going to go take 2 weeks in Botswana now. So I didn't go. On the trip was the founder of this market research firm who, my family took a real liking to. And he had a son who was like an EVP at Goldman Sachs.
Okay.
So he was basically set up as the pre-interview for me for this Goldman Sachs job. I met this guy and I just really liked him. Like he ran this 1,000-person market research firm that he built up from nothing. We had a great rapport, great interview. He asked me if you should pass me through to his son. And I said, I'd like to know if you have anything around here where I could help. And he said, well, as it so happens, we have they collected news and they collected advertising from like TV and print and stuff. And I said, as it happens, we've just put our entire ad archive online, right? So we've got the first digital ad archive in the world, and we don't really have anyone to manage that product because no one knows how the internet works. This was at the beginning of 2000.
Yeah, I was going to say, so this is like in that .com era, like 2000-ish? Okay.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
So I was like, you seem smart. You want to try?
So before we follow that journey a little further, at that moment, did you already have like, well, this is where I want to be 10 years from now, 20 years from now. I'm going to be a market research professional. I'm going to go be a tennis champ one day. Like, what was 25-year-old inner voice sort of talking to you?
Yeah, I'm going to say not even close to knowing what the next 5 or 10 years was going to be, which is very like disorienting to me in a way. I mean, both of my parents had one job for their entire careers. My mother was an ophthalmologist. My father worked for the state of New York regulating utilities for 35 years, and that was like the job.
Right.
And of course, that was more common in that generation than ours.
Right. I mean, that was my dad. My mom a little different, but my dad, same. When my dad was a dentist, the whole day.
Yeah. But no, I had no idea what, I'm sure I gave interview answers as to what I saw myself doing in 5 years. I certainly strove for growth, strove to learn more as I went, but was not even close to having a specific goal, destination, job function in mind.
So a lot of the people that I talk to have similar kind of moments. I don't think I ever really knew what I was going to do. I don't think I know what I'm doing tomorrow. But there are some people who definitely have that vision. When you feel that, like, I don't know where this road takes me, how do you make choices?
Yeah. So the probably the single best thing about the roles I've had is that I've gotten to make them all up as I went along. Like I have a fun fact about me that I guess this is ostensibly my third company I've worked for, although the second company changed quite a lot while I was there. But I have never taken a job that had a written description in advance. It's never happened.
Interesting. So when you took the first job, was there even a title? Was it just come work for me and figure out things to do? Like how did that start?
There's this new product we don't have. A product manager. I mean, I was just out of school. I was too young to really be a product manager, but so I think we called it manager of online services.
Okay. Was there ever a check moment for you? Because it sounds like you and I had some similarities here in that I never had gosh, it's 27 now, so time to think about what 47 looks like. How was that in your journey?
Yeah, exactly what you're saying. There was no moment like that. I mean, I certainly had, growth was important to me. I had compensation goals that, I think they make basic sense as we grow through our careers. I had, I probably at times I got a little hung up on titles, and I think those don't matter as much as I did then.
Sure.
Right. But then so part of the goal, I think I became a VP at 29 or 30 or something like that. And I was like, cool, I can check that box. But at the end of the day, like of all the things, that is the one that feels the least important in hindsight.
Right. And so how long were you with that company?
So the first company with the Safari guy was 3.5 years. He had actually retired. He handed the reins over to, actually, do you know the comedian Andy Kaufman?
Yeah.
It was his brother, Michael Kaufman. Great guy. Also went to Wharton, so
Okay.
he kind of had the crazy Andy Kaufman eyes, but he was also like a razor sharp business guy.
So wait, so you worked for Andy Kaufman's brother?
Yes, I did not report directly to him at the time, but I was one level down.
That's a funny little connection. Okay, and so you stayed there for 3.5 years, and then what happened?
So that guy was fired by the owner. Business was going through some hard times related to like the Iraq war was hurting the news side of that business, and they were just struggling. So I started looking elsewhere, and kind of similar to the first time, I found a founder who I really liked.
But no Safari for this one. That's just
no Safari. I met him at an Upper West Side bar.
Okay.
But he walked in he just walked in as a guy, and short sleeve shirt and jeans and a backpack. Pretty laid back guy, and I liked his vibe and I liked his story, and he was another guy. People who take something from 0 to 1 impress the hell out of me. Really feel great about being part of that club now. And you've done it several times.
Well, let's double click on that. Tell me a bit. So wait. So this guy was starting a thing, and what stage was that? Because I want to hear about how this ties to your 0 to 1.
Yeah. So he had built from a slightly different angle a similar business to this market research business,
okay.
Collecting ads, reporting them back to the marketplace, estimating ad spend, a bunch of things around that. It had started, like he was performing a job function at a bank that he could not, an investment bank that he couldn't perform without this information. Nobody had it, so he just started making it. He started this business in his kitchen. It eventually moved to the basement of his brownstone, and then by the time I got there, they had an office in Long Island City, but it was probably 100 people when I got there in late 2003, and it was through several acquisitions and other events, like 2,000 people when I left in 2020.
So the role you took was product, or again, in the script, we were hiring David Arnett to be David Arnett?
Probably right in between those two things, and maybe a little bit more the second. So it was still at its core a product management function for a little bit more data heavy product.
Got it. And was there anything that made you want to join this company?
Yeah, I really liked this guy, and I really liked his right hand person, who I ended up working much more closely with. And she was my boss for 13 years, I think, until she retired. And I really liked both of them. I believed in what they were doing. I think they had some advantages of being nimble in a way that because again, 100 people versus 1,000 people at the firm I was leaving. And it was 100 people, but it didn't feel like 100 people. It felt like 25, 30. It was very, everyone talking to everyone, big open floor plan, felt like a startup.
And so what was your sort of journey through that? You said you were there for 13 years, 1,900 new people showing up, plus or minus. That's a lot of change. How did your both role and journey in that role change through so much growth and tumult?
Being a data-based product primarily, like the evolution of technology was a pretty big part of that, and just keeping up with it. I mean, we had a big physical, I think it was an EMC machine, like one of the $600,000 EMC storage devices in our office.
Whoa.
There was a server room at our office. It was back in those days, and obviously all of that changed over time. We captured TV signals from dozens of US markets and had satellites all over the place doing that. There's a lot of pattern recognition work, which was really interesting. So anyway, one flavor of it was just keeping up with technology generally, and then two was keeping up with changes in advertising, like the way advertising worked in 2003 had no relationship to the way that advertising worked in 2020 when I left. New media came out that didn't exist at all.
Right? When you think about what it's like to be one of 100 versus one of 2,000, what was that transition like? Was there a meteoric rise at one point? Was it a gradual shift?
Yeah. So really two phases of it. The first 10 years, the original owner, the guy I met at the Upper West Side bar, owned and operated it. He was probably in his mid 60s when he sold. So he sold the business. My boss stayed on for another 3 years after, but he sold. Those first 10 years were really the startup like years. But we offshored an operation. That was a pretty big deal. We learned how to track new media. We got involved in SOC 1 compliance, which is a thing that I never thought I would work on. But that was really interesting, and grew a team. The more data we had, obviously, the larger team I needed to make sure that it was good. So that was rewarding also.
So today you work with like literally a countable number of people. As we said, you started at that company with 100, ended with 2,000. Have you found a personal David sweet spot? Like, how big is the organization that you feel really comfortable? Like, where you like the vibe, et cetera?
Yeah, it's a great question. Definitely closer to 10 than 2,000.
Okay.
10 is my number right now. So that's why I reference it. 10 is a little leaner than I like. You're soft in a couple of subject matter areas. If you need, two people to be able to do the same thing at the same time, that gets hard. But 25 to 50, I think would feel great.
You've got a fun story here. I know that as a kid you played chess, and you played quite a bit of it. Tell us a little bit about David, chess prodigy, for a moment. And we're going to tie that into your startup shortly. So, how those things, early observations might be interesting.
Yeah. Because I think, one of the things I've really come to appreciate over time, they say chess prepares you well for the real world. And I think that's very true, but I never really thought second level about that until recently. I think we'll go into that conversation in a minute. So I was in first grade at a private school in the city, and the school had just hired this great chess coach, and he had all of the like first and second grade classrooms play classroom tournaments. And basically, he just wanted to meet the kids who did well in these tournaments. So I happened to win my first grade class tournament. I was pretty good. I had never taken a lesson, but I loved math and games as a young kid. So I met this guy. He saw some talent. He ran a little school tournament after that with several kids who had been playing for a couple of years, and I won that tournament as a first grader.
Okay.
And he said, I may have something here. And then the next year, I won the national third grade and under championship. It's actually, I beat now my dear friend Josh Waitzkin in the last round. He's the subject of the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer, and that game is actually referenced in that movie.
For anyone who's stumbled onto my podcast who doesn't know the level of movie fan I am and how much that movie in particular has a very special place in my heart. I think it's one of the 20 or 30 DVDs I still keep lugging around from apartment to apartment for no real reason. So Josh has gone on to write, he went on, I think, to do martial arts, and his whole thing is on like putting your mind to something and you can be great at anything, right? Roughly.
Yeah, that's right. With the right mindset.
Would you say there are lessons that you learn from such an early, big kind of success, right?
I think the general answer to that would be yes. In my case, the journey's actually been pretty different. Even if you think of the way I just described, like my chess journey, right? I won this little tournament without ever taking a lesson. I won the national championship a year later. I was, not to overbrag, I was pretty strong on the talent scale. And actually, I think that made me a little bit softer than I should have been on the learning scale. I mean, I never had aspirations to go be a professional chess player. It's not that fun, a real life job. And Josh didn't go become a professional chess player either at the end of the day. So I always knew I was going to, just go to college at the normal time and go do something else after. And that's what happened. I did play through high school and I won the national high school championship. And then, it's only been a hobby and a fun story since. But it was something that I was pretty natively good at right away. Whereas building a startup, yes, I know how to problem solve, and a lot of that ties with chess, obviously, and I know how to prioritize, and a lot of that ties with chess also. But knowing how to get a business from 0 to 1 is not nearly as native a talent. I don't know that it is for anyone, but it certainly wasn't for me. So the amount of research I had to do and conversations I had to have to be remotely competent at this felt like a much bigger lift than getting good at chess in the first place.
Well, that's interesting. We're gonna stay on this for a sec. So there's something you're talking about, which is actually something I'm going through right now, where there are areas in my life where I feel I also had a natural skill, right? Everybody has you're by the way, you're allowed to brag. When you win a national championship at anything, you get some bragging rights. That's the whole point. But I think there is something to that concept that when you come naturally talented to something, that it can often be a detriment to the sort of learning to do the work, right? Like there are certain patterns that I was such a good learner at that I wasn't actually a good learner. I just was able to absorb like whatever the pattern was. Like Dave and I, by the way, we haven't yet put our skills to the matter, but we both identify as strong boggle players. But it's a good kind of example is I was always good at games like boggle when I was a young kid. So at no point in life did I ever think I had to learn like spelling, right? Like that wasn't part of the thing. Thankfully, that one played out pretty well. But I think there's a lot of areas. What is your take, like as an adult who had some natural areas of talent and probably quite a few, where do you find that that's giving you a leg up versus a leg down per se?
Yeah, so I think the problem solve, like I'm a natural problem solver. If you ask what my one superpower is, that's it. Whether it's chess, whether it's boggle, whether it's a crossword puzzle, right? All of those kinds of things.
Sure.
That part of the engine runs fast. I think the weakness is at some level the flip side of it, and it's really where I try to put in the work now, especially in 5 years I've been doing this, where knowing. I always felt like I needed to know the answers because I knew so many of them.
Okay.
And that's I don't know that it's ever been the best thing, but it's certainly not the best thing now. I had a funny thing the other day. I had some data I needed to organize where like the 2003 David approach to solving the problem would have been to write a little Excel macro and manipulate the data, get the output that I wanted. I probably haven't done it in 5 or 6 years. And I was about to sit down to do it. And I was like, wait, what am I doing? I opened up my ChatGPT window. I said, here's a data set. Here's what I want it to do. Can you write the code for me? And it was literally 2 minutes until I had the final result I needed. It does free up the time for you to learn other things. You can still learn from it. You're just learning faster.
Right. So where do you put your energy in learning these days?
So for my business, really the key piece I have to figure out is B2C user acquisition. I think when people find our product, and we're not going to dig into much of the product stuff, when people find our product, and if you're a sports fan, you should, we, they really like it. But finding it is hard. We're in the sports marketplace. It's a competitive marketplace. People are happy with where they're, having sports experiences. So, just getting on their radar is hard, and it's something that often is a multi-step puzzle. It's not just like, you make the right noise and people come. Like in the B2C space, I think finding your way to the right viral moment is the most important thing. And there's definitely no clear roadmap to doing that. There's guidance, there's examples of things that work, but there's no roadmap. If there was, I would be on it right now.
Are you saying those emails I get telling me these guaranteed tricks to go viral aren't going to pay off? Or are you saying?
I wish at some level, I wish there were guarantees, and at some I'm glad there are. There's a quote from A League of Their Own I really like, where Gina Davis is going to leave, and Tom Hanks is talking to her. He said, she's leaving because it's too hard. And he says, it's good that it's hard. But it's supposed to be hard. If it was easy, everyone would do it.
Yeah, that's a great quote. Let's take a quick moment. Tell everybody what your startup actually is. Also, maybe give us the quick, what was the very first vision of it versus what it is now?
Yeah, I'm actually going to answer that in the opposite order, just because I think it fits the story better. So one of the very few good things that happened in the early days of COVID is that I had a quarterly poker game with old friends in Brooklyn, where I'd drop down for a Thursday night and play with them. Obviously, we couldn't do that once COVID started, but it became a weekly poker game virtually. We'd get play through some app and get a Zoom going alongside of it. And it was like our one social outlet for the week, and those early months when nobody was leaving their house. And during those games in April and May of 2020, when there were no real world sports going on at all because of the pandemic, those conversations on the poker game were still being dominated by sports. This shared nostalgia aspect of sports, they really do act as glue in many friendships, and all of that was on display. I've been a sports fan my whole life. I don't know if you can see any of the sports stuff on the walls behind me, but that was there long before I worked in sports. I'm just a fan. But a friend of mine who's more of a casual sports fan, the light bulb went off in his head. It's like, there should be a platform for this, for people to have, the sports content they want mixed with the people they want to talk to, right? You can find sports content anywhere, but talking about it in your circle, that doesn't really exist other than in a text message thread.
Recreating the sports version of the water cooler moment in a semi-asynchronous, synchronous streaming kind of world.
Yep. So we envisioned, a fan engagement platform where a user comes in, they see curated content, the stuff they care about, and instead of talking among the masses, instead of, having a conversation with everyone at Yankee Stadium, they're having a conversation with the 4 people they went to the game with.
And so what happened next? Were you still working? Did you have like a 9 to 5, et cetera?
Yeah, so I had exited my last day. The firm I was at for 16 years, there was going to be a nice going away party. That party was scheduled for March 31st, 2020, which is
there you go.
Yeah, still has not occurred. We played, I think, a virtual trivia game. In my honor.
You can have the celebration the same night as I go see Jerry Seinfeld at the Beacon Theater. I still have my tickets.
Oh man, I've done that. He's really good. Funny guy. So no, I was ready to turn to something new, and I was in a weird position of not knowing what that would be. I had a couple of ideas bouncing around that were a little bit more closely related to stuff I had worked on, but I would say they were nowhere near as high potential or as strong founder product fit as this idea that my friend Dave presented to me. So I was pretty excited to get going. There was a lot about could 2 guys go build this? I mean, as a first-time founder, the reasonably strong career track record and good network, I felt comfortable that I could raise maybe somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million, $500,000 or $1 million as a first-time founder. A higher 7-figure number felt like a stretch to me.
Okay.
Maybe less so now, but then yeah. So could we do it at all? Could we do it for an amount of money that I could raise and have a little money left over to grow the business after? And we checked enough of those boxes. We did a lot of diligence, and it turned out we could do it.
So we talk about, you mentioned 0 to 1, but there's before 0, right? So you've got kids. You're at sort of the second half of your career stage. So the targets for this is high earning potential of our careers, and people like you and I go off instead and do startups. So why did you have to start Chuck?
Yeah. Well, you got to be a little bit crazy, but just the right amount, right?
We're already discounted that you're a little bit crazy. We know that much.
No, I think it's a bunch of things. I think there's a degree of confidence that you can do it. There's the knowledge that it'll be the most rewarding thing you'll ever do. Getting something, taking something that already exists and making it grow and making it better is great, and it's valuable work, and you've done it and I've done it, and it's terrific. Taking something from nothing to something is a completely just a completely different dimension of rewarding. My grandfather used to say, if somebody else can do it, why not me? I've always had that in the back of my mind, and there was that. People can do this. I've built up a skill set. I think I'm good at solving problems. I'm good at communicating with people. I'm good at finding people. I really think I can do it. I really think it would be more rewarding. And the last part of the answer, yes, we are both in prime earning years. I've been lucky to be in a position to be able to take this chance. I would say there is no chance I would be doing this if a lack of success in it would detract from my kids' lives in any way.
Sure.
I'm lucky that I don't believe that it
will. Was there a final thing you had to convince yourself of? Was it a gradual from that conversation to actually getting started that it just sort of started snowballing?
Yeah. I would say there was probably a good 6 weeks of, can we really do this, right? Can, just taking the numbers I laid out, could it be done for this? And I got enough positive signal on that to say yes. And then really when that was done, I sat down with my wife, who obviously is very impacted by all of this also, and said, I really think I want to do this. I think it will work, and I think it'll be the best job I ever have. And that was actually part of the reason why I had exited. I mean, the previous business was still going well. She just saw me enjoying it a little bit less, a little bit of I don't want to call it a frog in water, but a little bit of frog in water, where you're not going to leave the pot, but you're enjoying it a little bit less.
Absolutely.
And she was really wonderful about seeing that. And I would say nudging me in the right direction on it over a period of time. So I sat down with her, and she loves the idea, certainly loves the business. The hardest question she asked me was, paint me the worst case scenario. I was like, yeah, it's a really good question. And I did. And I'll say that the scenario as it's played out has certainly been worse than that financially in all other aspects, and in terms of practical impact on our lives. It's really what I have wanted it to be and more.
Amazing. So our paths crossed since you were at Chuck, right? When we first met, I was running Augie. We were in our first year, and we had just launched and successfully, had we already licensed Movie Doll by the time you and I were talking?
You were about to.
Okay. So on My World, we had launched this product, Movie Doll. It was basically at the height of the Wordle craze. It was, you get 1 second of a movie, like all of a movie compressed into 1 second, name the movie, second try, third try, etc. We then expanded that to Pixel Doll, which would take the box art, the Netflix cover screen, and pixelate it. And then every second it would get clearer, the zoom and enhance kind of thing. I will say we had an accidental viral hit happen. So some TikToker found the game, played it on TikTok, and for whatever reason, and it was literally the second TikTok we could find with a Movie Doll bit in it, and it went to 3.1 million views. And we went from I remember watching the Google Analytics, kind of thing. And so David and I then chatted about, could we use the engine in a sports fashion? So I'd love to hear what was going on for you.
Yeah, so I'll answer that in 2 parts. So You asked earlier about like how our business has evolved since that first vision, which I didn't fully answer, but really this topic is the biggest change. We have found that the stickiest thing in the fan engagement experience is a daily game that people can come to every day. And there are certainly other things that they enjoy in our platform, but before our network is fully built out, before we've scaled all of our features, that's the most reliable thing. That's actually where most of our engagement occurs. Like you, we were quick to notice the Wordle explosion, and as a nimble startup, react to it in weeks rather than months and years. As a large business would have, that was one of my
Right.
favorite things. So I had actually I had a game called Chuckle in beta, and I mentioned this to, it's a sports guessing game, and I mentioned this to a mutual friend of ours, this guy Dan Freed, and he said, "Do you know Jeremy?" Because he's another guy in our town who is also making a game, and that was right as Movie was blowing up. So that's where we met. I will say we have not had the same viral moment with Chuckle as you have, but it has done well. It's certainly there been, I think, well over 1 million Chuckle games played now, which is pretty great.
That's amazing. And so now you've got 4 games out, 3 games out.
We just rolled out a fourth that's like social only, but it is technically a game. So yes, four novel sports games.
So it's now been 3 years since you've been throwing the games at the market. What's been your biggest takeaway from it?
The stickiness of the games really has held up. Again, if people find this, they stay with it, they play it. On the flip side, though, the virality has just not been where we want it to be yet. And it's the kind of thing where if Kevin Durant played our game once,
One time.
and shared it, like that would completely change our trajectory. And so a lot of our user acquisition focus is really, a mix of trying to hit some singles and, walks here and there, but also, occasionally taking a big swing. And, frankly, we haven't hit the home run yet, but we're going to keep trying.
Hey, as long as you keep getting the at-bats, right?
Great.
You've now had 5-ish years of startup life, although arguably a lot of your career has been startup adjacent, or at least small business growth adjacent. If you could go back and, tap the shoulder of 21, 23, 25-year-old David and talk about things now without changing your real trajectory, we're not trying to do a Back to the Future moment here, but would there be something where you'd whisper in your ear, like, startups are cool, or, oh my God, go work for a big company? Or
yeah, so it's one of those things where if you don't really sit back and think, and maybe that's the answer to your question, is sit back and think every now and then. Take a few minutes every now and then, digest, whether some people keep a diary, some people just, take a few minutes for their own thoughts every now and then. There's something that I am about to say that is so obvious to me now that really didn't occur to me until 5 years ago, which is, if you think of those first 2 jobs I had, there's a guy who built a business from nothing, right? When I was 23, I think, when I started working there, who my family met in Africa. And there was this guy I met at the bar on the Upper West Side. These were 2 founders that I was drawn to. That is the thing that happened there. Their energy around their own businesses was different. I recognized it in isolation. It's what drew me to want to work to them. And I never really took the next thought and said, I should be one of these guys as soon as I can. And I did eventually become one, right. But literally 17.
Though some might say maybe that was the journey you were fated to take. Maybe you needed that time to recognize how much it really was in you.
And I will say, the one part of my career that we didn't hit on was what happened after the owner sold that second business in 2013, where we were purchased by a company held by private equity. They made 12 acquisitions in a 3 to 4 year span, and then flipped the entire thing to Vista, which is a well-known private equity firm. They're like, I think if you put all of their portfolio companies together, they're like the 3rd or 4th largest software company in the world. So I did, through that, get a whole bunch of exposure to best practices and, some org structure things that hadn't really been part of my life in these little startups. There were, I'm sure I learned more in those 6+ years than I did in the 13 before them, just from observing that. There was a lot of new stuff. And I do think some of that has been very important to running this business intelligently. So at some level, you are right. Like I kind of needed to see that part too in order to do this job better.
Well, I mean, this is hence the sliding doors. So you've mentioned two different people who are impactful to you. Is there someone who wasn't one of those founders who was part of these journeys that without which there was some lesson you wouldn't have learned or some experience, some road not taken that you don't think you'd be where you are today?
Yeah, I think really, the two people that I spent the most time working for, both were basically chief operating officers. I think one was promoted to president, but they were both incredibly sharp, but that wasn't as novel to me as how good they were at asking questions and listening. I had, again, going back to being a chess champion and a guy who was generally pretty knowledgeable, I placed a disproportionately high value on having information myself.
Interesting.
And working for these two people, it was very clear to me that not only is it okay to ask other people, who work for you and with you or are your customers questions, it's actually much, much better. And it's not that I didn't do those things, but I was nowhere near as thorough. I didn't ask as many second level why questions as I do now because I kind of hadn't trained on that. And it's not what my natural mindset was. And it very much is now.
The era of embracing asking questions, I feel it's actually in a weird way a little more behind us than it should be. Like I noticed that younger people in workforce, etc., just seem a lot more likely to think like, well, I'll just Google that or ChatGPT it or whatever than to ask the question. And I like that you're bringing that back because I think it's so important that we are learning from each other. I mean, you said it earlier about ChatGPT. I'm using it constantly and learning from it constantly, but also like not, right? Also like, no, you're a robot doing a thing for me, right? Whereas like getting to hear your stories and like ChatGPT can tell me what the experience is probably like to be a champion of the thing and then go on to do another thing. But it's not going to get it quite right. It'll be a bit more synthetic a version. So David, make sure you tell everybody where we want to send people to go click on a thing or download a thing or do a thing. Where are we sending them?
Yeah, so our website is heychuck.com. You can just go get the app at heychuck.app. You should do both of those things if you're a sports fan at all. It really is great. It's the most used sports app on my phone, and it's not just because I'm the product manager of the app.
So I get a legitimate moment to say "Go Habs" on my own podcast, is what you're saying.
You do, and actually, hang on. I should flash the shirt, not Habs, but the next best thing.
I give a lot of love. A lot of people know how big a fan I am of the Montreal sports teams, or now I guess team, but a big part of my childhood. Your number one team, though, is the Rangers are sitting on top?
It is now. As the Giants when I was a kid, hockey kind of fits my life better now. My kids are super into it. But I love them all.
Love it. Well, thanks so much for spending time with me. I love hearing your story and look forward to putting this out there. And it's finally time for us to have our Boggle match, though, David, okay?
That's right. Yeah, we'll definitely do that. Great chatting. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Take care.
Bye.